Charles Perry's Lost Blueprints. Actually, before I begin, I need to give you some history on Gladding McBean. It opened way back in 1875 to make pottery, tiles, decorative terracotta pots, and some clay sewer pipes. A lot of clay sewer pipes. Anyways, it's the oldest continuously operating terracotta plant in the country, still to this day, open, running, and it has been since 1875. It's a really long time. The plant is still active, but it is closed to the public, right? So the secrecy kind of fuels the mystery even more on this one. So Lincoln's growth was tied directly to the factory, right? Homes, jobs, everything. The railroad wouldn't be here, right, if it wasn't for Gladding McBean. So they were major part of Lincoln. Adding fuel to the fire are things like, how the other buildings in Lincoln have found hidden stairways and stuff. This is real, for real. Ask Old Town Pizza. They were doing their renovations downtown and they found a hidden stairway. Anyways, I don't want to spoil their story. Go on and talk to Old Town Pizza while you're there, get a pizza. Anyway, so Charles Perry was mentioned as an employee at the Gladding McBean factory in the Lincoln News Messenger in June of 1948. So he really worked there at that time. So, okay, anyways, on to the story. So this is the Lost Charlie Perry Blueprints. According to legend, it was in the late 1940s, and Gladding McBean had already been in operation for almost 100 years. And that's a long time. And so a guy named Charlie Perry made a huge discovery, right? So Charles, he was a shift engineer, and his job had been his whole life since he graduated from Lincoln High. I mean, it's who he was. So, he thought he knew every inch of the place, from the clay to the dusty steel buildings, it just everything. So anyways, one day Charlie was moving a desk into the new floor manager's office, and that's when he found a set of old blueprints shoved behind a filing cabinet, apparently. Everything was kind of yellowed and they were on really thick paper. He could tell they were really old. Older than the standard blueprints that they have, but they were definitely not the standard blueprints. So Charlie's curiosity got the better of him, and he kind of tugged him free from behind the file cabinet, and they mapped all the pipeworks and everything in the kilns, and it was all familiar with him. But when he noticed the other blueprints, he just froze. He's like, what? He wasn't exactly expecting to see what he saw. So anyways, he was flipping through the oversized papers, and he noticed whole pages of the blueprints were for basements and tunnels that he had no idea about. They didn't seem to have any functional purpose. And it's not just basements, but hallways, stairwells, wide open chambers that didn't exist on any plans that he had ever seen. One passage even stretched from the main kiln yard all the way to downtown Lincoln, but the blueprints stopped at the property line, so we don't even know where those go. Anyway, so some of the rooms were labeled with really vague words like Sub Depot A or Transfer Hall. I mean, just things that make no sense for a terracotta company. So anyways, Charles, he was looking at these things and wondering if this could be the truth behind everything he had heard about since he was a kid. Are these the secret tunnels of the Gladding McBean factory? He used to laugh this off to his friends when they would say something about it in school, but he never really imagined that they were real, right? And so anyways, he found these things and he rushed to the floor manager, who was kind of known for being a jerk. And he hated distractions. It was one of those bosses that just makes your life miserable, that you just don't want to go to work for. Anyway, so he spread the papers out on the boss's desk and he said, have you ever seen these? It shows tunnels under the plant, and his boss didn't even glance down. He just closed the folder and muttered, very outdated drafts, nothing you need to worry about. And his tone made it pretty clear that that was the end of the discussion, right? He had a lot to lose. His family found he finally found a career that, instead of a dead-end job. Okay, so Charles couldn't let it go, though. I mean, he just fixated on it. So that night, well, the kilns roared like the pits of hell and damnation themselves. Just kidding. He went to go look around, and at the back of one of the storerooms, that he saw a brick wall. And I don't know if you've ever seen a brick wall that has a seam in it, but you can tell the new bricks from the old bricks, right? And so he's looking at it, and that's called a seam. And some of the bricks looked a lot newer than the other ones. So for weeks he looked for the matching doors and staircases drawn on the plans, but nothing but the occasional locked steel door. Just nothing, right? And so one day after work, he went, down to the local tavern, and he asked the bartender, jokingly, "Where are old ladies at?" And the bartender joked about how the building used to be Madame Lydia's brothel, the speakeasy and poker room, and and there have been rumors of the tunnels and storerooms to hold liquor during the Prohibition, but people really didn't, talk about that sort of thing back then because, it was during the Prohibition. So rumors didn't go wildly rampant about where the booze came from. It just was there. So anyways, this seriously piqued Charles' interest, and, and he kind of chuckled and asked if there were any hidden tunnels down in the basement. And the bartender said, "It's funny you ask that. I told him there was a rusty door down there, but he never tried too hard to get it open." And the bartender described the door, and it sounded just like the rusty doors at the plant. So it really got him thinking. So the next morning, Charles went down to find the blueprints at work, but he found nothing at all. According to the lore, the draftsman said to Charles, best not to keep poking at old things. Some maps lead where folks aren't meant to go. So anyways, but he couldn't shake it. It just became an obsession for the guy. Later that night, Charles went back to the tavern right around closing time to talk to the bartender again. And, he wanted to go down there and try and open that door. He's just dying. And so once the bar was closed, Charles asked the bartender, can I go down there to the basement and try and pry it open? And sure enough, they did. And, what did they find when they pried it open? Nothing. A big clay wall. Like clay had been pushed right to that door and baked right on there, So anyways, he just had a lot to lose. And so, Charles retired from gladding decades later. We're never sure what he saw or what was real or just a draft, or due to his silence after he found the door to nowhere, the legend began. But sometimes in coffee shops where the old timers hang out and the conversation drifts towards the tunnels, there's always someone who swears Charles Perry once held proof in his hands, the lost blueprints of gladding McBean, which vanished just as mysteriously as the tunnels themselves. So it's been a mystery ever since, right? We do have some alternative theories, not to suck all the fun out of it, but some people think that the tunnels might have just been kiln flutes or ventilation shafts that got exaggerated over time. But you got to wonder, what about those sealed doors downtown? So, what really happened? Anyways, so what do you think? Are the tunnels real, or is it just a Lincoln legend? If your family has had stories, you've heard about this from grandma, whatever it may be, I would love to hear them. So, go ahead and dig them up, and, let's find out the truth. Go ahead and put it in the comments, okay?